Guys, see, yesterday I was walking around the street of Lagos like a normal human being, like a normal doctor just treating people. But today, I've now become like those people on the internet that I used to judge, that used to say things like, welcome everyone to my channel, my noisy people. My name is Dr. Renner. I'm a consultant pediatrician, and here on my YouTube channel, you're going to be learning everything that you need to know about the health of your child from the newborn period to adolescence. So, subscribe to my channel, click on the notification button so that you don't miss a single post, like, comment and share so that you make sure that all your family and friends get all the information that I'm providing here. Because I do what I do on this channel because what's important to you is also important to me. Please subscribe. Yes, like those crazy people that I used to judge on the internet that this one must be subscribed by force. Yes, so it's by force, you must subscribe. Today, I'm talking about neonatal jaundice. So if you don't want to miss out on that, don't go anywhere. But I'm going to do it in a different way today, guys, because people are always asking Google the question. But today, I want Google to be the one to ask me the question. So I'm going to read out the most commonly asked questions about a specific topic on Google, and then I'm going to try to answer the question, and then I'm going to tell you the answer that Google gives. Now, sometimes Google doesn't give you very specific answers. It just gives you some search results that are very relevant to the answers, meaning that my own search engine, my brain, that I want to go and suffer for 15, 16 years to make sure that I know this pediatrics to come and be telling you online is a better filter or search engine in pediatrics than Google, even though I have a lot of vast general knowledge, but this one is particularly related to neonatal jaundice. So let's start this off, let's kill this off. I'm excited, I'm pump. So we are here and I'm ready to start answering the questions. So people also ask, and that's how the Google display appears. So it says people also ask, what is the most common cause of neonatal jaundice in newborns? So that's the first question. What is the most common cause of neonatal jaundice in newborns? So guys, neonatal jaundice, first of all, is a situation whereby the skin of a child becomes yellow in color of a newborn baby. And of course, a newborn baby is the baby that is between day 0 or day 1 of life and 28 days. So whenever their eyes or their skin turns yellow, that baby is said to have neonatal jaundice. And that yellowish discoloration occurs as a result of the production of a chemical in the baby's blood we call bilirubin. Say it after me. Repeat it. Bilirubin. B-I-L-I-R-U-B-I-N. So that's exactly what it is. And so bilirubin is a sort of byproduct that comes as a result of the breakdown of red blood cells in our bodies. Everybody produces bilirubin. It's just that the newborn has less of an ability to clear that bilirubin from the system, and they produce quite a lot compared to how much they can actually clear it out of the system. And so that's why that bilirubin has a tendency to increase in their bodies and then give them that yellowish discoloration that we call jaundice. Now, the most common cause of jaundice is something we call physiologic jaundice. There are two types of jaundice. There's physiologic jaundice and then there's pathologic jaundice. Physiologic jaundice is the type of jaundice that happens to up to 60% of babies, whereby the jaundice will come, it will rise by itself without giving any sort of issue, and then it will go away without any sort of harm or any sort of untoward or bad effect happening. While for the pathologic jaundice is the jaundice that Renner was thinking about. In the do me wishy, in the do like patience wale jala. I got carried away a little bit, but yes, pathologic jaundice is very bad and it can actually damage the brains of babies. So to answer Google's question, to say that what is the commonest cause of neonatal jaundice, I would say is physiologic jaundice, whereby because there is a large amount of red blood cells in the baby's blood, and those red blood cells are being broken down and they do need to be excreted, but the child's liver, which is the organ that processes bilirubin, is not really mature enough to do that, then the child can develop jaundice. However, the cause of pathologic jaundice varies amongst different societies and different environments. In our environment, what some researchers have found to be the commonest cause of pathologic jaundice is a condition we call glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase deficiency. I know it's a mouthful, but some of your names are harder than this thing that I've just said. Some of your names, some of your names are harder than that to pronounce. So, glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase deficiency, G6PD deficiency, it is the commonest cause of neonatal jaundice in some environments that is pathologic, meaning that it's an abnormal cause. Now, in that G6PD deficiency, what happens is that the red blood cells get broken down very quickly as a result of the exposure to certain stresses, like certain drugs, like camphor, like mentholatum, which is why we say, please don't rub mentholatum on your newborn baby. Don't rub aboniki on your newborn baby. Is the baby feeling joint pains, waist pains from delivery? Trying to make the baby warm just involves you just wrapping the baby up as well as you can, and that even safe is not something that we don't even encourage too much. Don't over wrap. The baby isn't a shawarma. So the rub that you rub on babies, and please, there is nothing like baby mentholatum. I don't know, maybe I should be carrying cane to this particular YouTube session. There is nothing like baby mentholatum. Mentholatum is mentholatum, so please avoid it, and avoid storing baby's clothes inside camphor, because if that baby has G6PD deficiency, it can result in something that we call hemolysis, which will lead to the breakdown of red blood cells of the baby if the baby has G6PD deficiency, and that can lead to jaundice that will reach such high levels that it can actually damage the brain of the baby. Other common causes of pathologic jaundice would include ABO incompatibility, in which the blood group of the mother and the baby are fighting, they are clashing, like APC and PDP, and then it's causing the breakdown of red blood cells in the blood of the baby, and that can also lead to high levels of jaundice. There are a lot of other possible causes of neonatal jaundice that is pathologic, but I'm gonna go into those right now. I'm gonna move forward to the next question so that we can keep this rolling actually. So the next question is, what causes neonatal jaundice? And I think I've already explained it in a brief sort of way, that neonatal jaundice is caused as a result of the increased level of a pigment in the blood called bilirubin, and that bilirubin is gotten from the breakdown of red blood cells. Red blood cells, of course, are everywhere in our bodies. It's what gives the blood its red color, and it's produced a little bit in the liver, a little bit in the bone marrow, depending on the age of the child, but mostly in the bone marrow. And once that red blood cell is produced, it has a lifespan. And in adults, that lifespan is about 120 days. But in the newborn baby, it's somewhere between 60 and 90 days. And believe me, when the newborn baby is coming out, it's not the red blood cells that the baby is using that day that the baby is born. It's not that day that those red blood cells were produced. Those red blood cells were produced when the child was already actually inside the womb. And then by the time the baby is coming out, those red blood cells, some of them are dying. And so the child's liver has to actually do the work of trying to get rid of the waste product, which is called bilirubin. But unfortunately, the livers of some newborn babies are not as mature, and that's just a normal physiologic thing to clear it out of the bloodstream. And so the bilirubin level increases, and you can actually see it visibly on the skin or in the eyes of the child as that yellowness. Unfortunately, I've seen some really sad episodes and sad events whereby some parents didn't notice that yellowness of the eyes or of the skin on time, and on the day of the naming, on the day of the coma, fortunately the child was brought into the hospital convulsing, and the child ended up dying. And so that's something that we really don't want to happen. And so observing the eyes and the skin of the child is something that is very critical for parents to learn. And if they are in doubt, most hospitals will say, please come back and see us 3 days after delivery for us to just examine the child to make sure that there's no jaundice there, so that we will not tell it's a super story, good food and houses, when the first row. I got carried away again. The next question that is being asked by Google is Is neonatal jaundice normal? So I would say that neonatal jaundice most of the time is normal. That's the physiologic jaundice. But some of the time it is abnormal, and that is the pathologic jaundice. Unfortunately, it's going to be very hard for us to be able to differentiate the two just by looking. Meaning that if you ever notice that a child has jaundice, please take to the hospital, and then at the hospital we'll run several tests to determine which one is physiologic and which one is pathologic, so that we know that we are not going to tell any kind of stories that touch. So that's what needs to happen. So if you ever notice that the child is jaundice, or if the child is jaundice, please, hospital is where tests will be run to differentiate between the normal, quote, and abnormal jaundice. But most of the time, the jaundice is physiologic and is not going to cause any kind of trouble. So 1, 2, 3, 4. How much sunlight does a child need for jaundice? Now, this is a bit of a controversial issue, because is sunlight really recommended to treat neonatal jaundice? In most places in the Western world, they will tell you that no, it's not recommended to treat jaundice, especially if that jaundice is pathologic. If it is quite a high level, you don't really want to be using just sunlight, because how much sunlight is required, you know, to bring down the level of that jaundice to acceptable levels is difficult to tell. And so, especially, I mean, I personally am not going to go and spread my children in the sun for them to receive the sunlight phototherapy. But the principle is that, you know, with jaundice, there is a specific wavelength of light, the ultraviolet light, you know, which is in the blue spectrum of light. And then that's just big grammar for the fact that you need a specific type of light to reduce the amount of jaundice in the bloodstream as a result of the effect that it has on the skin. And so the light will actually go into the skin and then break down that bilirubin, and then it will reduce the amount of bilirubin in the bloodstream. But sunlight, I know they've told you tired, say early morning sun is good for jaundice, early morning sun is good for jaundice, but please don't just be doing early morning sun for jaundice without measuring, you know. So guys, don't let your only strategy for treating jaundice be sunlight. Make sure that the level of the jaundice is being measured, and so that you are not just assuming that the sunlight is doing the job. Meanwhile, the jaundice is doing heavy jangilova in the body of the baby. That's not what we want. That being said, the next question, and let me just let you know that I had recorded like 6 other questions, answers to 6 other questions, and then the battery of my camera decided that, Dr. Renner, it doesn't seem as though you charged me, and it just went off, bam, just like that, and none of what I had recorded saved. But in these sort of things, we move, we move. So, the next question here is, what should mothers eat if a baby has jaundice? I'm not aware that there's any specific sort of food that a mother would eat that will make the jaundice go or make the jaundice increase. So mothers, please feel free to enjoy yourself, feel free to eat whatever you want to eat, whether it's suya, whether it is hamala from Cardozo, whether it is hamala from Shita. Just eat anything that you absolutely want to eat. There is no restriction. However, theoretically, those children that have G6PD deficiency, that's those ones that have that enzyme deficiency on their red cells, whereby if they're exposed to certain drugs or food, the red cells can hemolyze. That means that they get broken down and they can have jaundice. Theoretically, if a mother should eat that kind of food, for instance, fava beans, although personally, I have never seen fava beans before. They say that it's eaten in the Mediterranean quite a lot, but the closest I've come to the Mediterranean is Google Maps, is Google Images. That's the closest I've come to the Mediterranean. And so I'm not aware that fava beans exist in Nigeria. The beans that I know in Nigeria is Oloyin, Olotu. Those are the beans that I personally know in Nigeria. But fava beans not very common here, but fava beans actually cause hemolysis. So if a mother eats fava beans, there is the theoretical risk that the child can actually develop hemolysis if the child has G6PD deficiency and is being breastfed by the mom. But that's a long stretch. So mothers, please feel free to eat anything that you want to eat. But me, I must personally touch on those people that are brand ambassadors for pawpaw water. People that say that they are giving their babies pawpaw water to treat the jaundice. Let me just let you know that if you give pawpaw water to your baby that had jaundice and the jaundice cleared, in quotes, it was most likely physiologic jaundice that was going to come by itself and go away without any kind of intervention. Meaning that even if you hadn't given the pawpaw water, that jaundice would still have cleared. Believe you me, if the child has the jaundice that really wants to show the brain pepper, it's not pawpaw water. It's not aloe vera mixture. It's not purple leaf that is going to get rid of that jaundice. You absolutely need to take that child to the hospital, make sure that the level is checked, phototherapy is commenced, and exchange blood transfusion is done. So please don't feed your child any kind of agbo or any kind of special thing that they bring from anywhere. Don't be a brand ambassador of agbo and of proper leaf water. How do they even prepare that inside? Do you boil it inside? I don't even want to know personally. So please, let's avoid all sorts of alternative remedies for newborn jaundice in the newborn baby. That being said, what is a normal bilirubin level for a 3-day-old? Now, for a newborn baby, that is within the first 28 days of life, a normal jaundice level or a normal bilirubin level is usually below 12 milligram per dl. So if a child has any bilirubin level below 12 milligram per dl, keep that in your mind, 12 milligram per dl. It's measured in one other unit that we call micromole per liter. That's another unit of measuring the level of jaundice, but what I prefer is milligram per dl. So 12 milligram per dl and above is considered as abnormal, but anything less than that is considered fine. However, it must be taken in context of the age of the child. The question here says a 3-day-old. It was quite specific. So there are certain charts that tell you, based on the age of the child, what level of jaundice is excessively high and what level of jaundice is normal. So for instance, in a 3-day-old, if I saw 20 milligram per dl, for instance, then that is definitely an urgent issue that requires for me to do an exchange blood transfusion rather than just the phototherapy. So it does depend on the age of the child. So for instance, a child that is 3-day-old, for this specific question, it's hard to tell. You really do need to discuss with your pediatrician. But anybody that has 12 milligram per dl and above, that is considered abnormal, and most likely your physician will start phototherapy in most places here in Nigeria. Abroad in the US, they might want to wait for a little bit of a higher level than 12 milligram per dl to start, because the machines that they use for phototherapy to bring down the level of the jaundice, they're usually quite effective, and so you don't really you can get to a relatively higher level and it can still bring it down quite effectively. But in Nigeria, we don't want to hear "It's a super story of good food and health." We don't want to hear that. So we start early. So let's see. Do babies with jaundice sleep more? Now, babies with jaundice don't necessarily sleep more. However, if you do see a baby that has jaundice that seems to be sleeping more than usual, then that is a bit of a problem, because it might mean that the jaundice level is so high that it's affecting the natural sleep cycle and the sleep center of the brain. Other problems that might come along with this sleeping excessively in a baby that has very high levels of jaundice might include excessive crying, fussiness, refusal to feed, poor sucking, sometimes even convulsions, fever, and unconsciousness. That is when the jaundice level has reached that's past be careful level. It has gotten to the level where we say that clap don't enter into dance. So you really don't want to wait for it to get to that level, meaning that, you know, as a policy, make sure that on the 3rd day of life, on the 4th day of life, you're taking your baby back to the hospital, even if they haven't given you that instruction, just for the baby to be checked to make sure that there is no jaundice. And if there is jaundice, the level can be measured before it gets to the place where the baby has started to turn sleep into his main primary occupation and starts to sleep like as if it's part of his KPI, that if he doesn't sleep, they will not pay him salary for the month. So that exactly is what we're trying to avoid. So the next question is, how long does it take for jaundice to go away in the newborn? This is one of these questions that parents ask me, and I just stop and I just look at them like this. Madam, am I God? When in medical school they were teaching us divination, when they were throwing cowries on the table, diarrhea was worrying me that day. So I did not attend that class. So I don't know how to predict how long you are going to spend on admission on the ward. so whenever they ask me that question, it's like I really can't tell, because it's very variable. A lot of things will determine how long a child with jaundice is going to spend on the ward. First of all, what the cause of the jaundice is. So for instance, if the jaundice is caused by an infection that we call sepsis, and that can happen, we might spend a longer time treating the child, because we need to give the child antibiotics that might last between 7 days and 21 days if the child has something bad like meningitis. Also, how quickly the level of the jaundice falls. So for instance, when we are treating with phototherapy, we want there to be 2 consecutive days of fall in the level of jaundice before we decide that we want to discharge your baby. And if we see just 1 day of fall, we might still be a bit cautious, because after 1 day of fall, it might still rise again. And sometimes, even despite phototherapy, the level of jaundice can still actually rise to the level where we might need to do an exchange blood transfusion. Sometimes we might even need to do 2 or 3 exchange blood transfusions, and so we pay attention to those things. And so we can't give you a very specific figure to say this is the number of days that you will spend. If we give that to you, then just know that it's a spirit that have possessed us, and it's not me that is talking. If you see me in any hospital and I tell you that this is the day that you will go home, my dear, slap me, because he's not me. Don't slap me, actually. So that being said, we can't predict, but we will always update you as to what you need to know when it comes to how soon we can discharge and when we cannot discharge. But please, let us not obsess about a coma, because that's one of the reasons why people agitate and want to go home, because you find out that you've been admitted, and I know it's hard for you to be on the ward after you've given birth because you are in pain, you want a nice comfortable environment. Hospitals aren't very nice, doctors sometimes can be impatient, the nurses will just eye you like this, madam, what's going on with you? So, you know, if the mother-in-law wants to see the baby, your mother wants to see the baby, your mother-in-law's auntie, sisters, uncles, brother also wants to see the baby, and so you want to just satisfy all these people. And of course, the naming ceremony is coming up, and you want to do that. You don't want to miss the naming ceremony. You want to happen, and you want it to happen at home, you know. But sometimes you need to forgo what is good to attend to what is necessary, and what is necessary is preserving the brain of that child that is going to use for the next 70-80 years. My dear, please stay on the ward and let's treat this jaundice finish before you begin to think about the coma or naming ceremony. So that being said, the next question is how serious is newborn jaundice? Is that serious as a heart attack? We don't joke around with jaundice whenever we see it, because it turns out that jaundice is one of the major killers of babies, newborn babies in Nigeria. You find out that because the levels can rise to such a high level that it can actually destroy the brain of babies, it can lead to blindness, it can lead to hearing loss, it can actually lead to difficulty with moving, it can even lead to death in the newborn period. And in the future, the child might have difficulties with learning and movement issues. So because of this, jaundice is a very serious condition, especially if it's the pathological jaundice and if it rises to a very high level. And we don't want that to happen, and so that's why we run around all the time and make sure that, you know what, this jaundice, you're not going to rise higher than this level, and so we're going to deal with you. We're going to deal with you the same way. I can't think of any analogy right now, but I'm going to deal with you. So that really is why we don't joke around with jaundice, because jaundice can get very serious. Now, how do we treat jaundice? Now, we treat jaundice with several modalities, but the commonest way of treating jaundice for us is the use of phototherapy. So that's a special machine that we put the child under, and it emits a sort of light, and that light helps to break down the jaundice of the bilirubin in the skin of the child and helps to reduce the overall level of the jaundice through several mechanisms that we call photooxidation, photoisomerization, and some other mechanisms that we don't want to bore you with. But these are the ways by which phototherapy works. Now, if phototherapy does not work, or it keeps on rising, or we get to a level and it's higher than what phototherapy will safely bring down, then we do what we call an exchange blood transfusion, in which we sort of take out the blood of the baby that has the high levels of jaundice and we replace it with donated blood that has a normal level of jaundice. Now, it's a very safe procedure, and we screen the blood and we do it very slowly so that the child can tolerate the procedure. And it's not like as if we drain all the blood from the child like our winches and ways that suck all the blood out. No. We do a sort of pull out a little blood, replace. Pull out a little blood from the baby, and then we replace with donor blood, and it happens back and forth, and usually takes us about an hour to complete one exchange blood transfusion. So if that doesn't work through, then we can actually get what we call an intravenous immunoglobulin, which kind of helps to reduce the amount of jaundice of hemolysis going on as a result of things like blood incompatibility, which is ABO incompatibility in the child, or rhesus incompatibility in the child. So you know those mothers that are rhesus negative, that when they give birth, they always give them Rogam. That giving them of Rogam is to prevent them from developing certain sort of proteins that can cause jaundice in subsequent babies. And so those are some of the things, or some of the ways by which we actually treat neonatal jaundice. So I think I've been able to address most of the questions that have come about, at least the top 10 questions that have come up from Google. And I hope you'll go and just, check out, read these things. Don't forget to like this video, don't forget to comment, subscribe and share, and turn on the notification button to make sure that you don't miss a post that I'm going to put out here. I hope you've had fun talking with me about jaundice. So leave your comments, leave your questions, and of course visit my website at thenoisynigerianpediatrician.com. Follow me on Instagram and follow me on Twitter, and it'll be so good to hear from you guys. Then I will talk to you later.